Since we're all about DIY, we try to handle as many of our own repair and maintenance tasks as we can.
But sometimes we don't have the skills or the tools to do the job right.
Now, a good example of that is painting. Now, we've painted our share of houses, both inside and out, but we've never painted a motor vehicle before, particularly not something as big as a motorhome. So that's not something we're qualified to do.
Now, even if we had the skills to do the job right, our basement storage isn't big enough for us to be carrying around a downdraft paint booth with us. Certainly not one large enough to just drive our RV into.
So our roof radius has been flaking for a long time, quite a number of years. Now, this is not an uncommon problem with many brands of RVs. We've seen lots of other brands that have the same exact problem, where the area where the roof meets the sidewalls and the front and rear cap have the paint flaking off, and ours, unfortunately, has suffered from that for a long time. But we haven't done anything about it, partly because we can't do it ourselves, so we've been kicking the can down the road and waiting till some sort of trigger were to get us to finally take this job on. Well, that happened recently, and we'll show you exactly how our paint got taken care of.
In order to get this job done right, our patio awning was going to have to come off the side of the RV. Because it's still working fine even after 14 years, we were a little bit leery about taking it off and then putting it back on again and having a 14-year-old awning back on the side of our RV.
Yeah, we thought if we were going to go to the trouble of removing it, it would be nice to put a new one on. But we don't like throwing things away that have usefulness. We don't like filling landfills with perfectly good gear, and obviously 14 years in one RV, you can tell we like to get good use out of things that still have life in them. Then the trigger happened. We found out about an RVer who had an awning that hadn't worked in some time and wasn't in a position to replace it. So now we could take ours off, give it to them, keep it out of a landfill, and get a brand new awning ourselves while paying it forward to someone else. When there's a job you can't do yourself, one of the most important things to do is find someone you trust who can do it.
Now, if you remember last year, we had our repair and maintenance work done at First Truck Center in Abbotsford, BC.
Now, this wasn't our first experience with First Truck. The first time we went there was to their Vancouver location in Surrey, BC, where we had a recall done on our Spartan chassis. And it just so happens that that shop also has one of the most renowned paint facilities in Western Canada.
They can handle anything from minor projects like our roof radius repainting all the way up to full collision repairs, where they're basically rebuilding a truck from the frame rails out.
They have a frame straightener, they have all the other special tools, expertise, and experience needed to basically take a wreck that we can't believe could be put back together and put it back safely on the road again.
And of course, most importantly for us, it includes a very large downdraft paint booth.
Of course, when we got there, the same sort of welcoming reception that we received in Abbotsford was SOP for our First Truck. They know how to treat customers. We watched while other people came in and out and realized they weren't treating us special because we had cameras. It's simply the way they do business. Now, before we go in, we're not going to give up on the DIY mantra altogether. We still like to do things that we can do for ourselves. So we removed our own awning prior to going to First Truck. This not only saved us some money, but some time in the shop, because this was a couple of day project and we didn't want to be there longer than necessary. So we went ahead and used the experience we've had replacing awning and slide topper fabric and took our own awning off before we went over to First Truck.
Even with the limited painting experience that we have, we know that a successful paint job is really all about the prep work.
There's cleaning, taping, sanding, everything that's needed to make sure that the surface is properly prepared to receive the paint for it to stay in place and look great for a long time. So it wasn't any surprise at all that the majority of the time spent at First Truck was preparing the surface for paint.
They basically covered our entire rig. They taped up everything they could. They put a bag, as it was called, around the entire outside of the RV, And that was all designed to just make sure that there was no overspray issue, that no unwanted paint ended up anywhere it wasn't supposed to.
And that's one of the things we've heard a lot about from other friends who've had RV paint work done. Two primary problems are very common. One is overspray, because the shops don't properly protect the areas that aren't supposed to be painted. And the other, of course, is lack of preparation, where the surface wasn't prepared properly and it ends up flaking off again in short order.
Now, all this effort in prepping the RV obviously didn't go to waste, because not too long afterwards, they were ready to drive it right into the paint booth.
Now, the final prep inside the paint booth includes special edge tape covering the ladder, the horns, the lights, making sure that absolutely every detail is finished before one bit of paint goes on.
And that paint was actually being mixed up by the machine in a separate room while all of this was going on.
One other important piece of prep that they spent a lot of time on was getting the color right. They use a special device that analyzes it, and then they go a step further by painting samples and holding them up to the paint in various lights to make sure that they're an exact match. Once they turned the big downdraft fans on, it pulled the bag down tight along the bottom of the RV. It makes sure that as they're painting, all of the overspray gets pulled out and filtered through the system rather than end up on things where it doesn't belong.
And now that that fan was running, they also used a blower in order to blow off any remaining dust on the RV or any of the other equipment in the downdraft booth. And that was just to make sure that nothing would end up getting stuck into the paint.
Now they close the big doors, seal our RV into the booth. They're almost ready for paint, and get ready by doing a final cleaning. Even though this is just a primer coat, it's obvious that this is going to look really different. After the spray cleared out, we got to see the primer up close. It looks so beautiful, it almost doesn't look like it needs paint. Now for the main event, the paint.
It's gorgeous already, even without the clear coat applied.
Now it's time for the clear coat. As shiny as it looks going on, it's going to stay about like that when it's dry. They'll bake it at 165 degrees Fahrenheit to dry everything down and get it ready to go outside.
This was definitely one step where I was glad we were not in the RV.
Then it's time to debag and de-tape. All the protective layers come off, and as carefully and meticulously as they put them on, they're removed the same way, making sure that brand new coat of paint doesn't get any nicks or cuts in it. So how's it look?
Fantastic from here.
It looks damn good from up here too. It's beautiful.
It's making me think I want to repaint the whole rig.
Yeah, I think so.
The roof is way shinier than the rest.
I think so.
And after all the protective layers were removed, they could reapply the new sealant at the corners where they'd had to remove it in order to paint.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
It's unbelievable that we waited this long in order to get this done, but it sure does look good.
Not only can they rebuild a truck or RV after a major accident, but they also do the same maintenance and repair services that Abbotsford does.
We also want to thank First Truck Center for allowing us to have the access that they did, so that we could get video of this project as it was getting completed.
You normally can't climb around in the paint booth like this, but we really did appreciate the opportunity.
Now that the paint work is finally done, we still have one thing left to do.
And that's to put our new awning on. But that's a big enough project that we're going to save that for a whole nother video.
A lot of people always tell us that our rig looks really good for its 14-year-old age, and part of that has to do with the fact that we do projects like this in order to keep up with things as they happen.
It's a lot less expensive than buying a new one. We hope you enjoyed this peek at one of the ways we keep our rig looking as new as possible.
And as always, safe travels, and thanks for watching.